Okay? Anyway, the learning outcome for today's discussion is you have to distinguish the four learning skills in the 21st century. Okay, what are the learning skills in the 21st century? There are actually four. And then relate authentic assessment to 21st century skills. So in other words, people, when you're able to identify these learning skills, these 21st century learning skills, it should not end there. It should not end by knowing, these are the learning skills for the 21st century. You should actually relate them and integrate them on your authentic assessment strategies. How could I develop, okay? How could I foster or nurture these learning skills among my learners using my assessment strategies? So later on, I will group you into certain groups, number of people, and you have to brainstorm together about what assessment strategy can you use for a particular topic in MAPE that would actually nurture the four learning skills in the 21st century. Okay? Before that, let us define what 21st century learning skill is. Okay? What is the definition of 21st learning century skills? Can you please read that, Gerald?
Define 21st century learning skills. The term 21st century skill is normally used to mean to certain core competencies such as collaboration, digital literacy, critical thinking, and problem solving that advocates the need for schools to teach students thrive in today's world. Various personalities define 21st century skills differently. This is what they got to say.
Okay, so there are many definitions about 21st century skills, but in many textbooks, they particularly pertain into competencies such as number one, collaboration, teamwork. You know, pag kayo ay nag-apply na, kung sakali man hindi kayo maging teacher or kung hindi man ang kapalaran nyo ay hindi para magturo but to work in a corporate company, into a corporation or to a company, you'll be a corporate worker. You know, one thing that employers find nowadays very important and very essential as a competency of a new or a fresh graduate is their ability to work with others. Okay? Their ability to work collaboratively with others. And that's one competency, no, sa 21st century skill, collaboration. Hindi na uso ngayon yung individual, you know? Hindi na uso yan. Although you should develop yourself individually, but most importantly, you should be able to adapt with the community. You should be able to work with the society as a whole. Okay? So when you work in a company or in a school, kung individualistic ka, kung ayaw mo nakikisalamuha sa tao, mahihirapan ka. You will not survive really. Okay? Pag patuloy mong nilalayo yung sarili mo sa isang grupo, you will have a difficulty surviving in the group. Okay? Kaya nga sabi dito, one of the competencies now in the 21st century is collaboration. Okay? And then we have digital literacy. You know what digital literacy is? Diniscuss natin yan sa Educational Technology 1. Okay? Critical thinking and problem solving. Now, so these are the authors or certain personalities who defined what 21st century learning is. Okay? According to Barnett Berry, who is a founder and CEO for the Center for Teaching Quality, he mentioned that 21st century learning means that students master content while producing, synthesizing, and evaluating information from a wide variety of subjects and sources with an understanding of and respect for diverse cultures. So dito na naman yung diversity. Okay? You're able to master the content or the information that you have, but most importantly, aside from that, that you have appreciation of the diversity of culture. Okay? The diversity of ethnicity, of ages, of beliefs and practices. So there is multiculturalism. Okay? So students demonstrate the 3 R's but also the 3 C's. Ang 3 R's natin, ito yung basic skills, right? Reading, writing, arithmetic, those are the 3 R's. But more than that, 21st century learning should demonstrate these 3 C's. What are these 3 according to Barnett Berry? Creativity, 1. Communication, 2. And the last one is collaboration. We'll be talking about those C's later on, okay? So they demonstrate digital literacy as well as civic responsibility. Virtual tools and open source software create borderless learning territories for students of all ages, anytime and anywhere. So Bartlett Berry actually emphasize on digital literacy here. Now, based on your own assessment, do you think that you are digitally literate? Okay. Now think about this when you answer that question. Am I digitally literate? Now think about this. When you have your lessons, okay, now that you are in online learning or distance learning, pag dumadating ba yung lesson sa inyo, do you volunteer to search on Google anything about the lesson? Na hindi naman sinasabi ng teacher mo, ito punta ka dito, panoorin mo to sa YouTube. Do you do that? If you don't, baka hindi ka pa digitally literate. Because you know, one thing about digital literacy is that you are able to identify which tools on the web or over the internet that you can use when learning. Okay? And more than that, you're able to utilize the internet, no? The web, the computer to its full potential during your learning. Yun yung hindi lang marunong mag-encode, hindi lang marunong mag-edit ng picture, hindi lang marunong mag-video. No, that's not all about digital literacy. But digital literacy, ladies and gentlemen, is when you're able to utilize, use, and maximize internet technologies and digital technologies for your own benefit. Okay, for your own benefit. And for now, to benefit you as a student during the online learning of Cagayan State University. So that's Bartlett Berry's definition of 21st century learning. Now, another is Sarah Brown Wesling, okay? In 2010 awardee of the National Teacher of the Year in the US. So sabi niya, 21st century learning embodies an approach to teaching that marries content to skill. You see, marries content. Pinag-aasawa yung kaalaman mo sa utak, okay, mga nalalaman mo doon sa skill mo. Okay, doon sa skill. Without skill, students are left to memorize facts, recall details for worksheets, and relegate their educational experience to passivity. Without content, students may engage in problem solving or team working experiences that fall into triviality, into relevance without rigor. So instead, sabi niya, the 21st century learning paradigm offers an opportunity to synergize the margins of the content versus skills debate and bring it into a framework that dispels these dichotomies. 21st century learning means hearkening to cornerstones of the past to help us navigate our future. Well, Sarah Brown Wesling actually made a very beautiful definition of 21st century learning skill. Sabi niya, the myth of it is that it is a marry, okay? It marries content and skills. Okay? It marries content and skills. Kasi, pag content lang ang focus natin, very passive ang education, di ba? Very passive ang education. Mag-worksheet ka lang, mag-multiple choice kaya, palang, yun lang yun. Pero pag skill lang naman ang focus natin, mag-compromise naman kung gaano ka authentic or gaano ka valid yung content na pinag-aralan mo. Right? So in other words, 21st century learning should hit a balance. It should strike a balance between content and skill. And our assessment strategies play a very crucial role on how we are able to marry these two. Paano natin mahihit yung parehas na content at saka yung skill. All right? That's the essence of it. Knowing now authentic assessment will help us teachers to actually develop, okay, to utilize assessment strategies that both hit the content target and the skill target among our learners. All right. So what are the 4 C's now? Ano ba yung 4 C's na sinasabi natin? Now, you can see in this slide the 4 C's of the 21st century learning. What are these? Number 1, we have critical thinking. Okay. Number 2, we have creativity. Number 3, we have collaboration. And then number 4, we have communication. So anong pagkakaiba? Ano bang definition natin itong 4 na ito? Ano yung tinasabi nating critical thinking? Ano yung sinasabi nating creativity, collaboration, and communication? So critical thinking, ladies and gentlemen, in a nutshell, is finding solutions to problems. I will discuss on that later. Creativity is thinking outside the box. Thinking outside the box. Collaboration is working with others. And communication is talking to others. Okay? Let's look at these forces individually. So let's begin with critical thinking. So critical thinking is the practice of solving problems in addition to working through problems, solving puzzles, and similar activities. So this is important in the 21st century because it is harder than ever to verify accurate information because of the massive influx of information, mainly because of the internet. So critical thinking, ladies and gentlemen, empowers students to discover the truth in assertions, especially when it comes to separating fact from opinion. So basically, ladies and gentlemen, critical thinking is the practice of solving problems. So in this particular C of the 21st century, teachers should utilize, okay, strategies that would hone or that would nurture the solving problem ability of students. Okay, the solving problem ability of students. So, nagbigay siya dito ng mga example na pwede natin gamitin like solving puzzle. Pwede rin ang web quest. Pwede din ang case analysis. Pwede din ang case studies. Pwede din ang inquiry-based teaching or inquiry-based learning. So those are examples that could actually develop the critical thinking of our students. So in MAPE, how could you nurture, how could you help your students become critical thinkers? Okay? They could use case analysis, di ba? Sa officiating, for example, ng isang laro, magpanood ka sa kanila ng isang laro, and then there will be a call, kunwari, yung softball, kunwari, may call siya na outside yung bola, tapos may mga nag-protest. The protest is the problem. So, pose the problem to your students and let them solve the protest. Okay, so that is one activity that you can use so that you could help your students become critical thinkers. Second is creativity. Okay, creativity naman is equally important as a means of adaptation. So this skill empowers students to see concepts in a different light, which leads to innovation. So in any field, innovation is key to the adaptability and overall success of a company. Learning creativity as a skill requires someone to understand that the way things have always been done may have been best years ago, but sometimes or someday that has to change. Okay? So creativity, ladies and gentlemen, is thinking outside the box. Okay? It's a derivative of innovation. It's a derivative of innovation. No one can innovate without creativity. Hindi pwede mangyari yun na pwede ka mag-innovate ng isang bagay kung hindi ka naging creative sa pag-iisip. So creativity is, for example, you have this phone with you. Yung cellphone mo, nakita mo siya. And you ask yourself, how can I make this phone better? Diba? How can I make this phone better? In a classroom context, yung strategy na napag-aralan mo, how can I make this strategy better? How could I innovate this strategy? How could I innovate this learning material? So if you have that, and you have answers to those questions, then you have creativity because you are thinking outside the box. You are thinking because you want to innovate what is actually present now. So how can you use that? What assessment strategy can you use to develop the creative skills of your students? Okay? I won't answer that question because that will be your brainstorming activity later on. Okay? Next, collaboration. Collaboration means getting students to work together. So this is when I ask you to brainstorm together, when I ask you to have a group activity, that's actually fostering or nurturing your collaboration skills. So collaboration means getting students to work together and get the best possible results from solving a problem. Okay, so collaboration is important because whether students realize it or not, they'll probably work with other people for the rest of their lives. Tama yan. Katulad nyo as teachers, you may be working independently in your own classroom, but after that, you will work with your co-teachers. And it's important that you know how to collaborate with them. And last but not the least is communication. So communication is the practice of conveying ideas quickly and clearly. Okay? So with communication lockdown, students can streamline their ideas and make a positive impression on those around them. So napaka-importante na ng communication skills talaga. Okay? Kahit sabihin natin na hindi basehan ng talino ang marunong mag-English o yung magaling magsalita. But you know, in the real workplace, napaka-importante ng communication. You have an effective edge over the others if you speak fluently. Okay? Kung alam mong i-express yung sarili mo, that would give you an additional edge among the other employees in the company or in the school that you are working at. So how can we actually develop? Okay, what assessment strategies can we actually develop or use inside the classroom in order to develop the communication skills of our students? All right. So what is the relationship, therefore, of authentic assessment to 21st century learning skills? Now, according to Pellegrino and Hilton in 2012, they argued that 21st century learning skills have started a paradigm shift on assessment in today's education. They support the use of richer, performance, and curriculum-based assessment instead of standardized, on-demand, and end-of-year tests that are easily scored and quantified for accountability purposes. So sa mga panahon ngayon, katulad sa DepEd, no, ang 50% ng grade nila ay performance tasks, di ba? Pag-aralan nyo yan last semester. The grade in grading, 50% of the grade is on performance tasks. Di ba napakataas, right? Why? Because teachers nowadays are very particular on, you know, skills, on demonstration of skills, and not more on you know, the result of standardized or written examinations. But what is more important nowadays is how they are able to use their learning into real world situations. Okay, so these 3 points here tell us the relationship of 21st century skills into our assessment strategies. The relationship lies on how we use these forces or how we integrate these forces in the development and assessment of our students. Okay. So number 1, establishing standards clearly in line with the expectations. So dito, sinasabi nito na dapat alam natin at clear sa atin kung ano ang ating mini-measure. Okay? It should be clear to us what we want to measure. And how can we do that is by establishing specific standards, establishing specific competencies or objectives. And when we are able to align, constructive alignment, we are able to align constructively our assessment strategies to our standards or competencies. Doon pa rin tayo magsisimula. Anong competencies natin? Anong standards natin for today? Ano bang kailangan nilang magawa ngayon? Doon natin ibabase yung ating assessment strategy. Okay? Number 2, developing high-stake assessments based on the standards by using extended writing and or performance assessments. Dito naman, yung high-stake, we take consideration already on what the community needs, okay? What the society needs, what the nation needs, okay? High-stake assessment. Hindi lang kung anong kinakailangan mo sa loob ng classroom mo, pero you should include in your assessment tools or assessment strategies as well if it is needed by the community or by the society. It boils again down to authenticity of your assessment strategy. And definitely, last but not the least, using the assessment to communicate what is expected, to hold relevant stakeholders accountable, and publish data to inform decisions for selection, placement, evaluation, diagnosis, or improvement. So dito, yung result ng ating assessment, dapat nagagamit siya. It should be utilizable. It should be usable. It should be of essence or of value to different stakeholders. Okay? But then again, no, yung 21st century competencies natin, all right, with respect to development of assessment tools and strategies, yun nga, to summarize, number 1, it should be based on standards. It should be based on our competency set. Number 2, it should be relevant to the community. Okay? It should be relevant to the society. And number three, they should be usable. They should serve a specific purpose. To whom? To anyone. Okay, to anyone in the stake, to anyone among our stakeholders. How? How will they use that information? How will they use that information derived from your assessment? It could be for selection, it could be for placement, it could be for evaluation, diagnosis, or improvement. So those are the three principles, okay, on the development and assessment of 21st century competencies. Now, this is your brainstorming activity. I will group you into four. Okay, I will group you into four, and then you have to brainstorm together about a certain topic, one topic in MAPE, or one topic only, and then you have to think of one, but mali ito, identify one strategy, no? You have to think of one assessment strategy that could develop the 4 C's among your learners. Could be in music, arts, PE, or health. Okay, again, one assessment strategy that could develop the 4 C's among your learners. Naintindihan niyo ba? So I will now group you into 4. I will pause the recording. Let us now sum up our discussion on unit number 1. Okay, so this is the end of unit 1 already. Okay, so for the information of everyone, next week we'll now moving forward to unit number 2. Okay, so just a summary of what we have discussed for the past weeks. Number 1, authentic assessment is an effective measure of intellectual achievement or ability because it requires students to demonstrate their deep understanding, higher order thinking, and complex problem solving through performance of exemplary tasks. Okay, so it requires a demonstration of exemplary tasks. Authentic assessment necessitates students to be active performers. So they are not just passive performers, but they are active. They are the main characters of the story. Okay, to differentiate, traditional tests lead towards revealing only whether the student can recognize or recall what was learned. Furthermore, there are 5 attributes of authentic assessment. It is selecting a response to performing a task. So it's moving forward, performing a task. It is contrived to real life. So it's more real life. Okay, authentic assessment is inclining towards construction and application of knowledge. It is student structured and it is direct evidence. It uses direct evidence. Furthermore, there are 21st century learning skills. There are 4, no? Critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication. And aside from that, 21st century skills also means or refers as well to digital literacy. Okay, so do not forget digital literacy as a main component of 21st century skill. And lastly, 21st century learning skills have started a paradigm shift on assessment, advocating the use of richer performance and curriculum-based assessment strategies, the very essence of authentic assessment. Okay, so thank you so much for joining our session for this afternoon. And I hope that everybody learned from our lesson on topic 1 on authentic assessment. So mahalaga na matibay ang foundation niya sa authentic assessment, no? Kasi lahat ng pag-uusapan natin in the next sessions are types or kinds of authentic assessment, particularly performance task, affective, and portfolio assessment. So yun yung basis natin sa lahat ng pag-aaralan natin. Okay? So before we go, can you please open your cameras for documentation?